Hi, I'm Cathy Davis, Davis Creative Publishing, and today I have Jack Davis, Cheryl Oliver, Maria Rogers O'Rourke, Julie Hoey, and lots of guests. They keep hopping in here. And today we're just doing an open forum where we've invited people to bring questions and we'll have answers, hopefully. And we'll just keep moving. If we hit a lull, I'll come up with a couple of questions that we've been asked recently. So did anybody happen to bring any questions in their pocket today? Well, I was curious. Yesterday, I was asked by an author that we've probably done 4 or 5 books. And she said she really wanted to have the proofreader wait until the very end after we had the book laid out to read the book and offer comments. And I said, I don't know that that's such a good idea, that we actually prefer a 2-step process where we have the proofreader read the manuscript while it's still in Microsoft Word. And that's where it's great to check for punctuation and syntax and all that other fun stuff. And I'll let Maria and Cheryl jump in here and talk more about what they look for in that proofreading stage. And then again, after we lay it out, go back and take a quick look at it and help us check for widows and orphans and things like that. Maria or Cheryl, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Well, the important thing I'd like to add is that what we do before we send it to the proofreader, actually, and I mean, what we do is we look at all of the different elements and make sure that we've got it as cohesive and as clean as possible. And then we really count on the proofreader to do a lot of things that we might have overlooked, to catch those things we've overlooked. And they do. And it would adjust the way the layout would be done in many cases. So there's an additional expense there if it's laid out before it goes to the proofreader. And boy, I love knowing there's a proofreader.
Yeah. Maria.
Yes, I second what Cheryl said. And I have to admit, it's kind of a point of pride when I review the proofreader's work and there's minimal markup. Like, yay, I did my job as the editor. But I love that fresh pair of eyes looking at it, because if I've really engaged with the author on the material, there are going to be things that get past me because I become more and more familiar with the work. And so that fresh pair of eyes earlier in the process, like you've described, Cathy, is really important, because once we're at layout, it's just too tight and too time consuming to go in and make those kinds of changes.
Well, and it becomes too expensive for the author. You know, you're paying double, if not triple, time for having 1 or 2 people look at the same content, which could have been expedited if it was looked at earlier on. It's more difficult for a graphic designer to go through and try and find the edit that you have found in a Word document and apply it to a document in InDesign that looks totally different.
Yep.
And then the proofreader still needs to come in behind that and make sure we found the right place to make that edit. So it's, you know, it's like triple time that could have been prevented. Yeah. So one of the other questions that we've gotten recently has been about how do I go about getting endorsements and where do we put them in the book? So I can handle the how do we go about getting the endorsements. And Jack, I'll pull you in for the where do we put them in the book. When an author comes to us and is preparing their manuscript and getting their book ready to be published, one of the things that, especially with nonfiction, that we find is a great addition is to add endorsements. And these are people who are familiar with you, familiar with your work, and familiar with your writing. And we may even send out a couple of advanced chapters or even a rough of the entire book. We've done that a couple times to have someone read through parts or all of that book and offer an endorsement for that particular book. And it may be a high profile, or it may just be a colleague, someone you've worked with, or someone that you're currently working with. And then once we have those endorsements, they typically come to us in Microsoft Word, and we ask our authors to put them in the order, please, that you would like to, order priority, that you would like to see them presented in the book, whether it's on the back cover or inside. And so, Jack, can you jump in here and tell us a little bit about where we put those endorsements in the book?
So normally, depending on the endorsements, the length, we'll put them in the first page or the first couple of pages. I've had a couple of books that had like 7 pages of endorsements, which is great, and they were all very long. So that took up, quite a bit of space. I don't know that you need 7 or that you need 7 that are quite that long. Basically endorsements are those teasers that kind of help draw interest into the book and make people become interested and want to buy the book. But what we can do with somewhat longer testimonials is to find snippets that are very germane to the book and put those on the back cover, or if you have a hardback with a dust cover, we can put those on one of the flaps so that they're available as another kickoff to the marketing aspect of where people can be interested in the book.
And then I was checking the chat, so I may have missed you mentioning this about how we then put them in the front of the book in their entirety. If we've cut out a snippet and used elsewhere on the cover, we still make sure they're in the front of the book.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And occasionally we've had high profile, like Jack Canfield, a couple other at that level. And right now I can't, they're not coming to mind, but where we've taken 7 to 10 words of a very high profile endorser and add those on the front cover at the very top. We call that an eyebrow quote up there.
Oh.
That does a great job, and as Jack mentioned, in helping to market the book. So Pat, Dana, I see you have a question in the chat. Are you asking about AI content helping to boost book sales? Can you unmute yourself and ask your question? Thank you.
The A+ content that you put on your Amazon page at the bottom.
Do I think it helps to boost book sales? I think people read that. I know I went looking for a book just before this call for a potential kind of a competitive book for a potential new author. And that was the first thing I did. I found the book and then I read that content to see if it was the type of book that I was looking for. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. I also think that we have a formula that we use for the back cover copy that we have found to be fairly successful in helping books. We think it's what's helping our books get into the big box stores like the Targets and the Walmarts and the Costco's. And we have a formula that we think works, and we like to use that and expand upon that for that Amazon content. But that back cover content formula is the one that we use when we post to Amazon and Ingram. And that tends to, we've seen a trend where it appears as if that's the only change that we've made, and more of our books are showing up in the big box stores. So Kim, what exactly does okay. Kim, did you get your question answered in all that rambling? I lost you. You must be.
So the A+ content basically is like the description of the book, or is it something in addition to that?
Is that what you're calling the A+ content in Amazon? Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
So Kim, like your Amazon content, we started with that back cover copy that we created. But it did make me think about when I first saw your question, Pat, about AI content, and we can open up that rabbit hole. Hopefully we won't go too far down it here. We have had a policy created for Davis Creative Publishing where we're very particular about the content that's being created by our authors and our writing coaches, our editors, and our proofreaders. And we actually now have it written into our contracts that it point blank says AI content is prohibited. Amazon and Ingram, as well as many publishers, have the ability to scan copy and look for plagiarism as well as AI developed copy. And we don't want to run the risk of having your book kicked off of Amazon. And I read an article recently from one of the people at Amazon that, you know, if it happens more than once, they'll just close down your account. So we just made it a policy. You're welcome to go out there and do research, but we want you to use your own words. Maria, I know that kind of crossed yours and my desk at the same time this past summer. Do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think it's kind of scary for people because the landscape is changing so quickly, you know, in our understanding of what AI is about and its potential. And I think we need to understand too that where the AI platforms are sourcing their material, you know, like they're pulling from things that are already published. And so it's plagiarism, you know, to use that heavy-handed word. And so, you know, I totally agree with your policy that it's fun to use to help generate ideas and to kind of get your creative juices going. But boy, if you start cutting and pasting over from that, you'll get in trouble.
Well, and especially if you're on a tight deadline, as an author, if you're on a tight deadline and you have a book launch coming up, and as with all of our anthologies, we have those tight deadlines. And if you're a single author in an anthology, or you have your solo book and your book gets kicked off, or your collective anthology gets kicked out because one chapter in that book has used AI and used it verbatim, you run the risk of destroying that entire launch and having to replan the entire campaign. So it's not a risk worth taking, in my book anyway. I don't like fire drills. Les.
Yeah, Cathy, I'd like to pick up on a conversation that I actually had with you some months ago. I don't know exactly when it was, but as you know, I published a book through iUniverse about 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I've been approached by a number of organizations that want to help me republish the book, get it into stores. And when I dig into some of those conversations, I wind up having to pay a few $1,000s to buy the initial books. And and I don't know if there are any quote unquote legitimate groups out there that help with that kind of republishing. But I just wanted to kind of get your input or anybody else's input who has some experience with that.
I'm going to stick to the facts. iUniverse is on the buyer beware list. And the independent publishing arena is an unregulated industry in the United States. So you'll have a lot of people, and I've seen this more than once, and I'm not saying that the people you've been approached by are not credible, because I don't know really who they are.
Right.
But you do have to be aware. And there are people out there drumming up new business. And I even know of a credible publisher who has created a new arm and is reaching out to solo DIY authors who originally did their first book themselves.
Right.
And every author on this planet wants to hear those magic words, "I'd love to publish your book," or
sure.
"I'd love to republish your book."
Right.
So the trick lies in the details. So I would read the contract very thoroughly, and we offer a service at no cost that I'm more than happy to read through a contract and highlight and come up with a list of questions that you need to ask back.
Right.
And flag and I would flag anything that I think is problematic. And the reason is, so there was, and again, this is strictly factual, so I'm not bad mouthing any particular publisher, but in the last 18 months, one of our authors was approached by Dorrance Publishing, and it was very pushy, and it put their red flags up, their internal red flags, and said, I need to talk to somebody about this. I read through the contract, and it was like a 7-page tiny mice type. You know, you really had to get it up close to your face in order to read it. Page 7, last page of this document, there was this little tiny entry that said, and I'm just paraphrasing here, oh, by the way, if we think your book would make a great screenplay, we can sell it as a screenplay and you don't get any of the profits.
Wow.
And of course, by the time you read through a contract that long and you get to page 7, you're just in it by then.
Yeah.
And so I flagged it, and I came up, there was a few other things that I said you need to ask. Now, there is an attorney here in St. Louis, and she's licensed both in California and here in St. Louis, and I'd be happy to give you her name. She's with Greensfelder. It's Marianne. I keep wanting to say Sade, but that's the other one. Marianne.
Yeah, that's right now, that's not my main interest. Frankly, I would prefer, and I think you just mentioned, I'd prefer to have a recommendation from a quote unquote republishing specialty operation that you think is a credible one or two or whatever that I could approach.
Well, that's what we do. We republish books. We've got 2 or 3 going now that people wrote earlier, sometime in the last 10 years, and they're coming back and updating them and putting them back out. And be happy to have a conversation. I'm guessing you may own your ISBNs.
I'm pretty sure that I do, yes.
Yeah. And so you've got an ISBN, and if you want to make edits to the document. Now, the trick, though, is you want to know what your contract says with iUniverse as to whether they'll let you republish it.
Yeah. Okay. I'll check that out.
Yeah, that's actually really good to know, Cathy. I didn't know you did that. So that I think a lot of people should do that, because I was just with one of our experts this week, and he's rewriting his book from 10 years ago. So I'll introduce him to you.
Thank you, Julie. Julie just put the name Marianne Wymore. Thank you, at Greensfelder. We've sent several authors to her. And let me see if there's any other questions here. Joanne.
I was just going to make a suggestion about the AI, and that is what I was going to say. I have some people that use AI just for the suggestions. You know what I mean? Not to use it, but just like, wow, I never thought of it that way. So that's just an idea for AI. And then when you and Jack were talking about endorsements, I was just curious if people are using them in their marketing, because I think that would be brilliant to include them in your marketing.
Yeah, they definitely should be. And when we request endorsements or have the authors request endorsements, it's always under we want to retain the ability to edit those slightly. We just want to make them sound good. We're not going to change the content. We just, you know, we want to proofread it and make sure that it sounds good. Because if the endorsement is written badly, it's not going to help.
Right. What I do normally when I ask people, you know, if I can give them a recommendation, for example, on LinkedIn, I send it first in an email. And I give them the opportunity to do what you just said, edit it, because they have a better way of saying what they once said, and then send it back to me before I post it, for example, on LinkedIn. Because I think you're absolutely right that, you know, we need to help each other with those types of things.
Yeah. And last you mentioned something, it'll come back. It just went out of my head real fast. But and Joanne, you work with a lot of those speakers and trainers and consultants that have probably been in business a while and probably did a book 10, 12 years ago and need to rethink.
Yeah, I think that's something we should address. So I have a note to.
Yeah, the content is basically still there. It's just needing to be updated.
Yeah. Sure. I always say they have a gold mine right there on their desk, probably, or at least in a file cabinet. A lot of old content that they can just brush off and, you know, blow off the dust and update, of course, and publish. But yes, I agree.
In using that content and making it fresh, adding it creating a new blog or a new new e-newsletter and a new social media and getting that information out there. So Kim, you've got a great question here. Making sure I haven't missed anything here. You just back up. Let's say Kim, we'll take yours first. So for the group, what would you say are your top 3 marketing strategies, marketing platforms or strategies that people, and we've got a variety of authors on this. We have nonfiction, we have children's. Pat, you do children's. And so there's a broad range. If anybody wants to jump in here and kind of share what you're doing to market your book, Kim threw that question out there. Oops, we lost Pat. Maybe she'll hop back in. What I can jump in here with, Kim, is the authors that I see have the most success are active on social media, which you are very active. I even said the other day, you have such a way with words. I usually laugh at every blog. There was the one about the cow. I don't remember which one it was. You were filming a cow. He or she was racing towards you, the teenage cow. And they were racing towards you and it bumped into you. Like, they don't know when to put just like teenagers, they don't know when to put the brakes on. Yeah. And I always get a big kick. So people love what you write in social media. And I think you're doing a great job because you're connecting with libraries and nonprofits and you're constantly getting out there. I use you as an example of what other people should be doing.
When also what what you just said about Kim, I know some people that actually blog or do social media posts to get reactions, and it helps them write their book. Because then they know what people are thinking and what other again suggestions or ideas that they can add to their book.
So would it be possible to get a link to whatever the blog is, Kim, that you have, so I can see all this wonderful writing that you do?
I need to create a blog. Basically I just share stories on my personal Facebook page, which is just Kim Carr.
Okay.
Or I have a business page, Kim Carr Photography, but I just write silly stuff that happens every day,
And you put it on Facebook?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And if I just go out to Facebook and put in Kim Carr, I can find it?
Yes, sir.
Kim, if you want to add it into the chat, that would be great. Then everybody, your Facebook link. Now, Cathy Bernard, you had a question earlier, back when we were talking about AI. You want to open up your mic?
Yeah. So what I was just wondering, when you were talking about how you could be accused of plagiarism, what I'm wondering about is, like, say I do a blog, or used to do a blog. I shared some of the same content that I had in a blog post. Could they actually find that I plagiarized myself? I'm just wondering how that
we've
works.
we've only had that happen once, where someone had gotten a question from Amazon if they were the owner, and I forget now who it was, but they all they had to do was give them a link back to their website, say, yes, by the way, I am the owner, because here's my blog from 2017 or wherever it was. And
okay.
No, you should be able to use your own, because the bots now are so intelligent that they should know by now that once they do a search, they'll find you as a part of that search anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. And Kim, the name of your book is Dandelion, My House Chicken. And it's a lovely book about one of the chickens on your farm that actually lived in your house. I'm making sure we got all these other questions here. So one of the other questions that I have had recently is, I need 200 books. Should I just get those off of Amazon? Jack, you want to take that one?
Well, we have some other resources here for local. I just did a pricing for a small children's book. It's about 50 pages. It was in color, and it's up and it's already on Amazon, and it'll be available in bookstores here shortly. But the pricing was pretty close. The only thing that you might save if you have it printed locally is that you can usually just go pick them up yourself rather than the shipping. So that's an option that you might consider. I'm still, researching for more book printers, but basically you have to order quite a few, and 200 is a good number. Some people want like 25, and that's just not gonna fly with a printer. You need to order a pretty decent quantity. So that's the only caveat.
Sorry, one of the things that we've also noticed, because we have authors in Florida and authors in California, it's cheaper to print, depending on the book, it's cheaper to print the book here in St. Louis and ship it to California than it was to print in California.
Yeah.
And have it delivered out there. And we had the same thing happen with Florida, one of our authors in Florida. And so it just kind of depends on the book, the best place to get it printed. Formax in St. Louis, we'll add that. Thank you, Pat. And I guess if we need a contact, I'll reach out to you, who your contact is over there. And since you do children's books, I'm guessing they do color. Okay.
Yeah, I've talked with Formax.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
They look like they do good work.
Yeah. So one of the other questions that I've gotten recently is why do I need to be on Amazon and Ingram? So if you're one of our authors, we automatically set you up on Amazon, and we set you up with Ingram Spark. We set all of our authors up as their own independent publisher. Amazon is great for people that want to buy online retail. Ingram is great for getting your book in every place else. So Ingram is your distributor and Ingram just bought, during the pandemic, they bought out Baker and Taylor, which used to be the library distributor. And so now Ingram has that resource for being able to distribute to libraries also. The libraries can get their books from Ingram. And Ingram is also the one, if you have a sister that happens to be working in London, or a cousin that lives in the island of Samoa, they can walk into a local bookstore, and if they only know your name or they only know the title of their book, they can ask for it, and that bookstore can get it through Ingram. So if you want more than retail, Ingram also is the distributor for Barnes & Noble and a lot of those big box type of bookstores. So if you're not with Ingram, you're missing out on a huge target audience, potential audience. So any other questions? I'll stop rambling here for a while. And any of our team, yeah, Kim. Kim, yeah.
Am I muted or okay?
You're on.
That brings up a good question about getting into Barnes and Noble and all those other locations, because I have questioned you about my book. I guess it's too thin to have had the title printed on the spine.
Mm-hmm.
But in researching, I found out that Barnes and Noble won't accept books that don't have the title printed on the spine. Is that true?
It depends on the Barnes and Noble.
So,
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. I know
so as I'm working on my, go ahead.
Yeah, you keep cutting out a little bit, but I think you and I had a recent conversation about your next book and ways to make it thicker. So that spine, you need about 150 pages for a 1/4 inch spine. And Jack, what's the minimum depth? I can't remember whether it's Ingram or Amazon that has got the stricter regulations on that spine.
Yeah, so it's basically Ingram has a little bit stricter. They have a safe area basically that they designate for around the entire book and for the spine. And so Ingram seems to have a little bit more, or I should say, a little bit less area for you to work with. And KDP or Amazon is a little bit wider. But I think you only need really about 100 pages for the most part. I mean, even if you just have it as mice type, really small type on the edge, you can get it on there with about 100 pages. So
that's awesome. Pat, have you experienced that also?
Sorry, me?
Yes, I'm sorry. Have you with your children's books, are you I'm
no,
not sure.
They don't have a spine, and Barnes and Noble did carry the paperback.
So I know the Barnes and Noble there on Clarkson loves local authors. I've had authors who have taken photos of their books. They didn't even know Barnes and Noble had them. One was Bill Ellis. He walked into that Barnes and Noble and they had a display of his books, and he called me and he said, "Did you do this?" And it's like, well, I'd love to take credit for it, but no, we didn't. But they love local authors. The Webster Novel Neighbor, and then there's a Barnes and Noble in Ladue and West County Mall. Those three tend to be, as far as Barnes and Nobles go.
The one I went to was Mid Rivers, and I did a book signing there.
Okay, awesome. Kim, that'll be closer to you also. Thank you, Pat. Yeah.
I have another question, because if I bump it up to like 100 pages, which I can easily do, with photography and with my images in there and stuff, but is that too much, too many pages for the age group, the younger age group and stuff?
Well, I think your book, I took a copy of your book to my 9 and 11.5-year-old grandsons. And I think your book is at least 7 through 14. And then younger, because if you've got a grandparent or parent that'll read it to a child. So I personally think your book has a big age range spread. The older they get, they can read it themselves. The younger they get, it's just fun to read with them, the story about it. And that's, to answer your question, is whether it's too much. That's when you rely upon your layout artist and your book designer to help it flow, so that there's something on each page to either read or talk about. And if it makes sense to have it in the story, I would put it there. If we're just adding filler and it doesn't make sense, then maybe not.
Okay.
Joanne.
Thank you.
Well, what about if Kim would, or anybody would put in like fun, like we did, Cathy, with the magazines, like contests and challenges that, like you said, though, that go with the story to fill up more pages. We did it during the pandemic because we thought people were at home and, bored and stuff like that. And people loved it.
So, in the back of your book, Kim, you could have a word search game, just the one with all the letters, where you've got all the farm animals listed out, hidden. And I think there's actually computer programs that'll do that for you now. If you Google it, how do I create a word search puzzle? And then we've also taken it where we had someone, and Jack, I can't remember it was the goats book, where she was trying to get a thicker book. And in the back of the book, was it the goats one, where we took the illustrations and pulled all the color out and just used the outlines and for kids to color in the back of the book.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. We sort of like made the back of the book into a coloring book
where kids could color.
Right.
And Kim, you know enough about Photoshop, you might be able to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know anything about Photoshop. I've never used it. But it's funny, I have created the word search puzzles before. So I like that idea, and I want to do a coloring book, but for some reason with photos, it seems that it's hard to, I can't find a program in which I can create a coloring book page from my images. So if I can do that on Photoshop, I guess I'm going to have to break down and purchase that and try to learn it.
That might
Or
be a
hire
good
somebody.
conversation for you and Jack to have. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there might be a way in Photoshop, but I don't know it well enough. And thank you, Joanne, for adding those links in there. Cheryl, did I see your hand up?
Yeah, I have a question about when you were talking about Googling to get a puzzle, a word puzzle. Would that come out as if it, could it be an AI red flag?
We want to, there are programs that will create the puzzles for you.
Okay.
So you put in, like those word clouds, how you can put in the words and then make those word clouds. I had heard there's supposed to be one out there that will do that in one of those word search games where you type in a bunch of words and they'll create it into a little square block that has words going up and down and left and right.
And since I put it in there, if you have questions, you can call me and I can get you in touch with the person that created ours. She's my virtual assistant and she's fabulous. So.
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So what we're kind of closing in on the end of our conversation, but what I would like to do, if any of our team has any last minute words of wisdom that based on questions, and they didn't even know I was going to do this, but sorry, based on questions that you receive a lot, some parting words of wisdom as to what makes it easier to work with authors and authors, something like that. Yeah.
I have one for myself.
Yes.
Mainly because I'm working on a book now, which will go unnamed, that did not have a proofreader or an editor. And it took me 2 hours to go through it just to make sure that all of the sentence was together, as opposed to a hard return in the middle of a sentence in the middle of a paragraph. There's no way to sort of like search for that, but a global way. So I had to look at every page to make sure that happened. And there was a couple of extra tabs that were in there that never should have been in there.
Yeah.
And there they are in the middle of the paragraph. So, I mean, I can't imagine who did that or why you would want to do that. But those are the type of things that you're talking about where it's a triple thing where, someone's got to look at it, someone's got to look at it again. So if you can get someone to look at it at the beginning and kind of weed out some of that sort of stuff, it's certainly a lot more helpful.
Well, yeah, and we're not asking people to lay their books out in Microsoft Word. We're just asking them to give us a clean copy that doesn't have tabs in the middle of a paragraph.
That it just has all the stuff that's supposed to be in there and none of it that isn't.
Yeah, we don't slap hands or anything, but it's a Cheryl. Did I see your hand?
Yeah, I'd like to add to that because I'm working with some authors right now that are older, shall we say, and they don't understand the technology. And so we're having to go through a lot of iterations in order to get what they're doing, what they're handwriting, literally, into a format where we can publish it. And I think that I'm personally a victim of technological idiocy. And I really do believe that there are some things that happen when a document gets converted from something, whether it's a Google Doc into a PDF, into a Word document or whatever, where there are little hidden gremlins in that document. And it is so frustrating. And I'm really experiencing a lot with some of the new changes that are happening daily, yesterday and today on my own computer that I had no control over. So just saying, when you get, it's worth having an extra set of eyes and at the right time.
And simple is less stress. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne, did I see your hand up?
Yes, I've been blessed to work with Cathy and Jack 3 times, and they all 3 became international best-selling authors, anthologies. And what they did, I think, that made such the difference is every step of the way we did get proof from a writing coach. And it was so much easier to, now ours is again only 1 chapter, but it still was so much easier to correct it. I think it was like 3 times that they reviewed them. And it might seem like, 3 times, but it's so much easier when you can do it in bites like that than trying to do the whole thing, especially I imagine if it's whole book. So I think it's perfect that the more eyes on it, like you guys are saying, the better.
No, thank you for
and
that.
Easier.
Yeah. Pat, Dana?
I believe that I don't care, even if it's a children's book manuscript, it should always be professionally edited. Even with a 32-page picture book, I always send it, to a professional editor. I have a master's degree, and you wouldn't believe the things that they can pick up and do. I think before you ever send it to a graphic designer, people like yourselves do an excellent job. It should be professionally edited.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's going to save you money and save a lot of time. It's just easier
And
that
make
way.
you look good.
Yeah, make you look good.
That's our whole goal here. So Cathy Bernard, you had a question. What are the main things to not do to give a clean copy besides the tabs? We have a document, Cathy, that I'll send you that we share with our authors about please do this and don't do that. Because yeah, it reached a crescendo last year, and it was kind of like, okay, let's just write it down and make it easy for people to figure it out. And I'm happy to share that with anybody on the call. Maria, did I see you start? I know I saw you shudder when you heard Jack's story about yeah, well, and that happened because the particular client, who is not in St. Louis, their printer went out of business during the pandemic, and so all they had was a PDF, and we had to extract content out of a PDF, which again creates a whole bunch of stuff, unnecessary things that we have no control over, and so it got interesting. But I greatly appreciate you all for being here, and I greatly appreciate those of you who are clients and those who have commented today. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to any of us. We'll send out the recording, and it'll also be posted to YouTube. And then we'll also, Julie, if we could somehow make the chat available, because there's some links in there. Maybe we could send that out with the link to the recording also. And if you have any other questions, please reach out. I appreciate you all for being here. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.